This video will contain spoilers for the entire numbered Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy. I've always wanted to say that. Video games are very near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. The chance to escape, the fantastical settings, and the ridiculous amount of joy they bring are just the first to come to mind, but if I decided to really think about it, I could probably make a whole video on that alone. When I think about the games that made me who I am today, there's a few that come to mind. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, Pokemon Moon, Disney Infinity 2.0, Smash Ultimate, Persona 4 Golden, and of course, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. When I played Xenoblade 2 for the first time in 2018, I was a drastically different person. I had different interests, a different friend group, and ultimately had a pretty different personality. But this game and the knock-on effects of playing it all those years ago have, in some part, made me the person I am today. The Xenoblade series means a lot to me, and I love all three of the games in it that I've played. And as I'm writing this video, I have no doubt in my mind that the person I am now wouldn't exist without them. And I would have never fallen in love with this series in the first place if not for the fantastical, beautiful, and unforgettable world of Alrest that Xenoblade 2 takes place in. If you know me, you know that fantasy and world building are some of my favorite things in all of fiction. I love stories like One Piece and Freerun because they present huge worlds full of history, lovable characters, and unique settings. The idea of a cohesive world that operates on a different set of rules from our own fascinates me in so many ways, and looking back on the media I liked as a kid, it clearly always has. But I never gave this any thought, or even really noticed it, until playing Xenoblade 2. The setting of Alrest made me realize as a whole that I love fantasy worlds, and even now, in a post-future redeemed world, it's my favorite setting in the series, and unless X or a hypothetical Xenoblade 4 are total masterpieces, I don't see that changing in the near future. That's not to say Ionios or the Bionis and Mechonis are bad. Both of them are incredible in their own right, and this franchise is so deep that there's so much about them that I don't even know, but Alrest holds a special place in my heart. It's no secret that Xenoblade 1's development was never fully conventional. The whole concept of people living on Titans in the first place came from an idea that Tetsuya Takahashi, the director of the series, had one day. The Bionis and the Mechonis themselves were actually physically modeled before the characters and story beats even came into the picture, and I think this fact has become deeply rooted in the design philosophy of the whole series going forward. If you've ever played a Xenoblade, you know the games always begin with a description of the world and the situation that world is in. Take Ionios from Xenoblade 3. The game opens with Noah's now iconic line,
"Fighting in order to live, and living to fight." That's the way of our world. Ionios.
The worlds are always the driving force of the story, rather than just being the stage for the story to take place in. Because of this, Monolith always goes out of their way to introduce the worlds at the very beginning of the game, and they do this so masterfully. Xenoblade 1 opens with the Battle of Titans, which is the starting point of everything that happens in the story and the linchpin of the game's final conflict. 2 opens up with a serene moment between Rex and Gramps before showing that Alrest is a dying world. It's beautiful, and it's not driven explicitly by selfish gods, but it's controlled by the whims of people who are too big for the dying world they live in. And 3 opens with war, because That's all Ionios is to the characters of 3, a massive battlefield. The scale is probably one of the most important parts of the whole operation. Monolith almost magically sells to the player that the landmasses they're exploring are absolutely gigantic. Seeing the giant Mechonis looming in the distance in 1, or watching Gormot's head slowly shift from side to side as you explore Torrigoth, or even looking up at Sword March in Xenoblade 3 are not only incredibly memorable, but also incredibly functional. Having these details in the background makes these areas feel so much larger than they may actually be in function. This illusion lets Monolith trick players by having pretty small explorable areas and still selling their size. And the thing is, a lot of Xenoblade areas are just huge anyway. There's literally no better example I can think of than Arithia Sea. Arithia Sea is an area that combines what may be my favorites from 1 and 2, and manages to elevate so much about what makes both of these separate zones so special. Discounting the slightly janky boat physics, it's a definite contender for the best zone in the entire franchise. You'd expect an area so big to have absolutely no content in it, but Monolith spare absolutely no expense in filling the area up with side quests, hidden items, characters, settlements, unique monsters, and so many secrets. Arithia Sea is the perfect marriage of scale and function. Probably my favorite aspect is the history that goes into these settings, though. While Bionis and Mechonis never really felt like they had the densest history to them, the little nuggets we do get are really intriguing, but what 2 and 3 do are absolutely incredible. Allrest is a dying world. Literal continents can disappear in the blink of an eye, yet each one that remains has its own politics, religion, cuisine, and way of life. The characters have all been molded by the world that was given to them, and since a lot of the game's cast were present for a good chunk of the major history of Allrest, trying to piece together all the relationships between these people as the game goes on, only to be a part of some of these relationships in the DLC, is a truly once-in-a-lifetime experience. I also really love the way the game uses accents. Some really clever foreshadowing is even tied to characters' accents, and I think that's a really interesting idea that not as many fantasy games as I'd like play with. But in Xenoblade 3, the intrigue comes from the lack of history. Most of the cast know nothing about the past, and they don't give it a second thought. They live in this world and simply try to make the most of each day they have. Historical sites are just treated like more battlegrounds because nobody has any concept of what history is. They live a mere 10 years, and few make it to that 10-year mark. They have nothing in mind but making it to the next day or to the next battle. When Future Redeemed released, and people who actually know the past behind some of these places were around, we get some really interesting interactions that show the difference between people in and out of the cycle. This world-first approach to design makes for really interesting character stories. These conflicts tend to stem from a desire for the characters to have more from the world, and when the player is encouraged to spend time exploring and thinking about said world, it makes things all the more poignant. I think the best example of this is in Torna. If you've played Xenoblade 2, you probably played the main game first. You know that the Tornan Titan is going to be destroyed. You know what becomes of Jin, and you know that Laura and Adam are not going to make it. Yet, getting to explore the Tornan Titan and Oresco itself, and meeting the people and helping them out, makes their fate all the more painful and really contextualizes the power of the Aegis. If you think back to what I said about a sense of scale, just imagine. A game makes you spend hours exploring a beautiful, rich, luscious environment and making you endeared to each and every person who lives there. Then, imagine the game quite literally destroys it. That really just goes to show how impactful these events are. Hearing about it is one thing, but seeing it happen after exploring is a completely different thing. Ultimately, there's 1,000,001 things I think all three games do incredibly well. All of them hold a really special place in my heart for entirely different reasons, and if you somehow got this far without playing the games yourself, I really encourage you to. The Xenoblade franchise is one of the best JRPG experiences you can have in the modern day, and the worlds, amazing as they are only a fraction of what makes the games so special. I love them from top to bottom, and the chance to talk about them and share a fraction of that love means a lot to me. So thanks so much for watching, and I'd appreciate it if you subscribed.